In today's episode of the Pathmark Presents podcast, I'm here with an interesting guest today. I'm with Samantha Mathews. She is hailing over as the CEO and CDO of Loci. And Loci is essentially playing in the safety training world. It's a safety training platform that generates gamified content. And today we want to be learning all about that, what that actually means, and also how Samantha, as a leader of the company, thinks about growth for the team. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Give us that, 360 overview. What is Loci all about?
So Loci makes safety interactive and memorable. Loci's games give you sort of pre-incident training. The easiest way to put it is it's simulation training at scale. So normally only first responders or people with like very high stress, high risk jobs get simulation training because it's the best kind of training you can get. And we've figured out a way to give it to regular folks like you and me.
Nice, very cool. And in which type of sort of companies do we find Loci to be used? And do they have to have a certain size? Is there a certain amount of people required, or like maybe share a little bit about that?
Sure. So safety managers are like teachers, like they don't always get access to the right tools. And so we created a platform where they can get their safety information as short and memorable games, and they can create those. We're really trying to solve the very expensive problem of human panic. And so our games tend to streamline and extend what a normal in-person training would require. So the people who use our product are safety managers or safety directors, or even community managers, people who are in charge of making sure other people know things, not just that they've seen them, but that they truly understand them. And so the users of our platform, like the key power users of our platform, are anyone who's responsible for the safety of others. And generally speaking, our customers are people who are responsible for 1,000 people or more. And that doesn't just mean employees, like it could be a hotel, right, where there's a lot of guests, or an arena where there's a lot of guests. So right now, normally safety trainers only really have the opportunity to train employees. Like even contractors often fall through the cracks because they're not tracked through the traditional means of like an accounting system and things like that. So they don't actually end up in the learning management system. And so at any given moment, at any property where you have property and casualty insurance, like 40 to 99% of the people haven't received training. And so what we do is we work with large enterprises to set up a baseline threshold of what the most basic information that you want everyone who comes there to know to stay safe, and then create a way to actually reach those people, like a content delivery system. Maybe it's going to a phone, maybe it's going to a hotel TV, maybe it's going to a big jumbotron. We make the training scalable to anywhere it needs to be delivered. And so now these organizations can maintain what we call a 100% trained threshold. And if they maintain that threshold, we can advocate for lower premiums. So ultimately, our business model is to help large-scale enterprises reduce their property and casualty premiums by delivering gamified safety that's verifiable to every occupant that they're responsible for.
Yeah, makes a whole lot of sense. And those safety managers, right? It sounds like they are the ones who bring that into their organizations. Or who else would be raising their hand and say, "Hey, we need something like Loci"?
Yeah, so risk managers. So if you're a lot of large-scale organizations that have multiple properties or campuses, it's in their best interest to underwrite their own property and casualty insurance. And so a lot of those, even if they're not doing it and they're using a local broker, they have a dedicated risk manager. This person doesn't really interact a lot with like different departments, but they do have the ears of the C-suite. And they're pretty reachable. So when I was starting, we were lucky because we got access to a large enterprise to do a pilot right as a startup. And we were able to get buy-in from the people who our product touched. It doesn't just touch the safety manager. We use security data. Security managers get all the best data for properties, but then they don't have means to sort of share it across the organization. So they create things like conditional access and credentials and whatnot, but safety managers don't even see that system. So we offer, we have to get buy-in from the security team to create risk profiles from their data that we then offer to the safety manager. So we were figuring out who needed to sort of be involved as a stakeholder in our product. And that was one layer, but they're not necessarily who buys the product. They're who wants the product. They can advocate for the product. but ultimately a risk manager or somebody who's going to have the ears of the budget makers is the person who's going to be able to actually create the buy or sort of push the organization over the edge to purchase. Yep. So yeah, our users are like directors and community managers and in the company, but our buyers are risk managers.
And how do those risk managers and safety managers, how do they hear about you guys? Like, what's sort of the typical client acquisition channels that you guys are leveraging, for growth?
Well, we have been really lucky that we kind of, I feel like I found something that everybody was waiting to be invented. A lot of safety managers, they grew up playing video games, or they see their kids play Minecraft and making all these worlds, and then they're using PDFs and like PowerPoint to teach things. And they know that there is a better way, because really what their workplace is a game environment. You have tools, you have people who are characters, and you have story worlds, which are scenarios in which you might need to solve an issue. And so I think in most cases, people are just sort of waiting for it, I find, and serious games are something that is become quite well studied through the resilience engineering and risk reduction communities. And so I found the sort of universities that were teaching resilience engineering and the organizations that had done forays into gamification and serious games, and just put myself out there, just basically sent, these groups in little industry pockets are small and they share email lists. And we made an example game, especially for the pandemic, the germ science investigation, which teaches the science behind health orders, so people can discover them for themselves and actually change their behavior versus being told what to do. And so we just use that as a sort of top of the funnel example. Hey, here's all the health orders you've been trying to give your organization, but it's available in 22 languages. It's fun to play, and you can actually incentivize people to play it by offering prizes and things at the end. Not only that, you're going to have the data of what people understand and don't understand. And up until now, so much of training is one way, and then like a check mark, right? And so much of even marketing is that you're like, oh, I have an impression, but it's like, did the person get it? You don't know. And so that the two-way communication channel that a game provides you as somebody who really wants somebody to know something or discover something is just the most powerful tool out there, I think.
I see. Very good. Okay. So now, how do you personally, slightly switching gears here, how do you personally think about the website? Because it has to communicate, obviously, that story, it has to convince risk managers, safety managers. What role do you attribute to the website at the very moment?
Right now, our website is actually kind of out of date. It is, it's really important, but we had this huge sort of epiphany. I think anybody who's gone to market with a product knows like what that game's like. You're just like, it's like driving a car down a windy road. You like are never heading the same direction for more than a couple minutes, it feels like. But we realized that selling, on our website, we were selling, we have like the opportunity to buy systems that our game provides, like workplace safety, germ science, fire safety, things like that. And because we had started off like right off the bat at a pilot with a big organization and making tools that we knew they needed, it seemed like that would be a no-brainer. Like, okay, then we'll just sell to more big enterprises. But, anybody who's spent any time in a big enterprise knows what a beast they are and how long that sales cycle is. And so basically, as the pilot was wrapping up and we're starting to figure out like, okay, getting onto the budgets now and things like that, I'm like, I don't see how I'm going to be able to do this with the team I have, or even double, like it would take double the team I have to actually like close these customers. What am I going to do? And at that time I had gone over to, but I knew who our personas were. Like I really understood who I was making this for, and went over to a big resilience engineering and safety conference and just asked as many people as I could who I thought were in similar roles if the key things I was solving was something that they were looking to solve, and really listen to what their problems were. And it was like, everybody was like, how do we deal with contractors? How do we keep people trained beyond the classroom so they're up to date? How do we track all of this? And So I knew that the things I was solving for C-SPAN and the shipyard was something I could solve for everyone else. And in that, I just realized that also people, whenever they saw a system, they'd be like, oh, can we do this for that? And so I'd made the game engine so that we could make any game we wanted. But what I realized is that everybody wanted the game engine, and that that was the true power. And that actually these users that I was talking to, these people who are like our power persona, they represent like the EU nuclear like organization and like NASA and Netflix. And so if I can reach them and build value for them, they will build the game that's exactly needed and then sell that to the organizations who I want to be my customers. So that was a big shift. And so now we're just actually rebuilding our whole site to focus on converting and getting people signed up to our platform. Yep. to start making games. And it's free to start making games. And we have sort of like a masterclass style approach to teaching change management at large scale organizations. And our goal is to build the next generation of safety leaders and be the largest like serious game engine in the world, like the largest game engine in the world for serious games.
Yep. Makes a whole lot of sense. Very interesting how you described that epiphany, that the actual engine in itself is what is the most attractive.
Yeah. So our site is not converting anybody at the moment because we haven't updated it, to answer your question, but now we have a pretty clear idea of how we're going to reach those people. And we get inbound from just the few conferences I've gone to quite regularly of people asking how they can get into our program to start using our games. It's really just been a matter of figuring out the best way to capture the interest that we already have.
Yeah, and what do you see happening moving forward to the page? Like, what do you have in mind? Like, what's going to be, how do you plan it out to be?
Well, I think going to a user focus. We realized that we needed to have a sort of a community play. That communities were the best way to sort of grow a funnel of users that wanted to use our product. And I got really great advice recently. I have like wonderful mentors, and she was saying like there's 3 types of communities, right? And they can be blends of them, but there's communities that are about meeting each other, like networking, right? It's communities about finding reliable sources of information about an industry or a topic. And then there's very tool specific communities, like say Salesforce or something, where it's like all about you using our tool and getting better and getting the most out of that. And obviously you can have a combination of all of them. I'd say we're more closely aligned with like the Salesforce model, where we know that every single safety leader of tomorrow needs a tool like this, or they'll never be able to reach everyone. And we know that the biggest barricade to getting into large scale organizations is navigating change management. And so our focus is on building and grooming and training these sort of young, eager, innovative people that usually just get like brought in to save something, some sort of disaster at a place, and then have their dreams crushed. And it's just kind of like a repeating cycle of burnout. Oh, let's get someone new who's going to change things, dreams crushed, and the cycle continues. And so we wanted to arm people not just with like risk and resilience engineering, but actually how to navigate these like change in really old school organizations. There's a huge shift in the industry going from what's called safety 1 to safety 2. Safety 1 is where you're measuring risk and incidents and near misses, and safety 2 is where you're measuring all of the preventative measures you take and all of the training you create. So it's a challenge. Like people want to get there, but it's hard. Like one of the big things that I learned in the last actually 2 months was, because I was working with 2 corporations on the same campus that have the same parent company, it was really interesting to see that one organization fully understood their problems around not having role-based tagging and not being able to reach everybody. And the other one was just like barely understanding like where they were in their problems. And I think as somebody who's going to sell to enterprises or sell to businesses, understanding where that organization is at in their self-awareness of their own problems is critical, because you could spend a lot of time where you're not getting paid just explaining to them their problem. And that kind of like, if I hadn't had the stark contrast of 2 such similar companies in the same place at the same time, I don't think I would have picked up on that. And so I'm saying it out loud so other people can hear it, because You don't want to be educating people on what problem you're solving. You just want to solve those problems, and you want to find people who get it. And obviously your marketing efforts can go to help create a climate where people understand that problem. But right from the bat, you just want to walk the other way if somebody doesn't get it right away.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting. It's been actually recently coming up in the show a couple of times, like this idea of like having a problem and being aware of the problem. These are two worlds. This is just
two
like
worlds. Yeah, it's crazy how different that is. And so it's in that awareness now. I'm like, oh, okay. So part of our whole vetting customers is helping to make sure that we know they're at the right stage for us to even help them. It's nice when you start to figure out what questions to ask to save you a world of annoyance, you know?
Yep. Very good. I would like to switch gears a little bit and get to know you a little bit better, Samantha. Like you have, as the, as a leader in a company, CEO, CTO role, like that's two very demanding positions. Like, how do you keep educating yourself? Like, how do you learn? Is there like peer groups? You mentioned some mentors. Is there like certain, I don't know, outlets, media outlets? How do you like to keep learning for yourself?
Yeah, I love learning through, I'm a big audio person, so I listen to a ton of podcasts. I really like reading. I find the best thing is if you find a book you really like, or you find something you really like, to just go deep into all the references and find the communities and the places that these things come from. For me, I've had a lot of success in standards groups, standards committees. I think this is a place that's often overlooked, especially by marketers, right? Like they're not going to the W3C and figuring out certain web protocols and things, but they have a direct impact on how your business will function. And I think anybody who's really trying to do something innovative or have an impact in the technology space should at least be aware of the standards groups and committees that govern basics and policies in your area. I think I see so many founders that have no idea about these things. And just from a recruiting perspective as well, like you're going to find a bunch of people who are so passionate about the thing you are doing that they're literally dedicating their time to make rules and fight other people about it. It's probably the most passionate group of people you can ever meet. And for a founder, it's really nice because like, I think, on a typical personality trait scale, like founders are conscientious, open, things like that. And I think, I love those groups because there's a real low agreeableness factor, but a high openness factor. So there's people who are going there because they want to get to the bottom of something, right? Or they like believe in something, and surrounding yourself, even if it's just for your, like, just with people who care that much, like you won't find anyone else unless they've started a company and they're a CEO. And so I often say, like, if you want to go find friends and people that are like you and actually be like really in not just the information sources, but the debates about the information sources, that's the place to go.
And just to make it simple for people to get, like, is that you go to the association pages or you sign up in the community?
IEEE, like look up, like if there's things that you care about, like, I mean, for me, I'm like, oh, cool. Safari just put the navigation bar on the bottom. Like that's not going to mess up everything. Like these kinds of things where I'm like, oh, I need to actually go share my opinion. Like it makes a difference as a business to join the W3C as a company, pay the dues and go say something. Like you're actually going to be heard. Right. And so, the IEEE, W3C, like I'm sure there's tons of like for advertising and marketing, these standards bodies for best practices. These are the people who will give you the best, most up-to-date, most like freshest information you could ever hope to have.
Very cool. Since we're slowly approaching the end of the interview, I want to throw some quick rapid fire questions at you. Are you ready for those?
I'm ready.
Cool. What's the last book you read?
Ooh, Left of Bang. It's all about everything that happens leading up to an explosion. So everything left of bang, and how you can learn about clusters of behaviors and people to start to predict, outcomes before they happen, ideally.
If there would be no boundaries in tech, what's the one thing you would fix for your role today?
Oh, what's the one thing I would fix for my role today? I would love to be, I worked for years in WebXR, spatial computing. That's kind of what led to me building this game engine. And I worked for 10 months completely in virtual reality with my coworkers, and we'd just meet in space. And one day I'd be Keanu Reeves and somebody'd be a spider, and we'd just be like collaborating. And I'm really excited for when we can work that way, and it's not flat screens, and it's a little bit more spatial and contextual.
And for the last question, I would love to go to the, back to the first day you starting working on Loci. What's the one advice you would give yourself?
Ooh, the one advice I would give myself is to probably, I'm a real product person, I like building things. And though I had validated my product development cycle with user testing, I hadn't like extended that user testing into messaging. And so like my customers love the product. They like people that I thought would use it were like giving me incredible feedback, but I wasn't including like how I talk to them in my product development cycle. And then going backwards to do that sucked so much. And if I could give myself any advice, is that like, even if you're not like products like a year away from being ready, marketing the features, the copy that goes into talking about what you're doing and why, and like really finding out those drivers and the words people attach to earlier in my building phase, I really wish I had done that.
Very cool. Samantha, I really appreciate you taking the time today and share with us more about Loci. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Loci, what's the one thing that they should remember?
Safety is very sexy, and like knowing your way and knowing your environment and having a deep understanding of your environment makes you so receptive to your surroundings and to other people. And I think if you're a marketer, if you're a business owner, how you communicate to the people who are coming into your place and how you identify who they are and what they do is really important. And so thinking about making information that works with people's brains, that's giving them the right information at the right time, this is going to change the experience people have of your place or your product. And so we want to encourage everybody to work with us if you want to make technology that helps you other people think rather than think for them.
Thanks a lot for being a guest on Platform Presents.
Thank you so much, Lucas. It was great being here.